The crutch hit the diner floor at 7:14 in the morning, and 40 people pretended they did not hear it. The slap came 3 seconds later. It was sharp and small and devastating in the silence of that room. The kind of sound that should have made every person in there move, should have made a chair scrape back, should have made anyone say a single word. Nobody did. The waitress stared at the coffee machine like it had just told her a secret. The trucker by the window developed a sudden and intense interest in his scrambled eggs. An older couple near the front door began having a quiet, careful conversation about the weather. Outside, the first real blizzard of the season was already pressing against the glass, turning the parking lot into a white smear of wind and motion. Inside, the air was warm and smelled like burnt coffee and bacon grease, and the particular kind of cowardice that only fills a room when good people decide it is not their turn to be brave. The German shepherd in the corner booth rose from the floor without a sound. His name was Storm. He was 6 years old. The right side of his face carried a long, pale scar that ran from above his eye down to the corner of his mouth, a souvenir from a building in Kandahar that no longer existed. His ears pinned flat against his skull, the fur along his spine lifted in a slow, deliberate ridge, and from somewhere deep inside his chest came a low rumble that did not reach his throat, did not become a growl, did not announce itself to anyone in that room, except the man whose hand rested on his collar. That man finally set down his coffee cup. His name was Caleb Hayes. He was 38 years old. He had served 22 months overseas as a Navy SEAL combat medic, and he had been home for 4 years, and there were mornings like this one when he could not tell which version of the world he was actually living in. He had not planned on being anyone's hero today. He had driven 40 minutes through the start of a Montana blizzard to get to this diner. Not because the coffee was good, which it was not, and not because he liked sitting alone in a vinyl booth while the world slept, which he did not. He had driven 40 minutes because his garage did not have heat, and he had already spent 3 nights on a cot in the back office, staring at invoices he could not pay, and a promise to his dead father he did not know how to keep. The diner was warm, the coffee was hot, and for 45 minutes he could pretend the world was manageable. He had been on his second cup when the door opened and the woman walked in. He had not noticed her at first. He was not the kind of man who noticed things he was not looking for. He was staring at a paper napkin folded into 4 corners, and he was thinking about his daughter Lily, who was 9 years old and who had asked him the night before whether the shop was going to be okay. He had told her yes. He was not sure he believed it. The woman who came in was in her late 30s, dark hair pulled back, a dark wool coat dusted with snow. She moved with a crutch under one arm, and below her left knee there was a prosthetic that she did not try to hide. She moved the way people move when they have spent a long time learning that the whole world wants to make their body a topic of conversation, and they have decided very privately to deny the world that satisfaction. She took the booth 2 tables away from his. She set her bag down. She pulled out a tablet. She ordered black coffee and a bagel from a waitress who was too tired to do anything but nod. Caleb looked away. He had been raised better than to stare, and even if he had not, he had seen too many people reduced to a single visible fact about themselves to ever do that to another human being. Storm, however, was watching her. Caleb noticed it without turning his head. The dog had shifted his weight at the booth, not tense, not alarmed, just attentive in the particular way that working dogs become attentive when something in a room registers as worth paying attention to. Caleb did not know what Storm had seen in her. He never quite knew was Storm. The dog had instincts that ran on a frequency human beings could not tune into. He had pulled Caleb out of a collapsed building in Kandahar with 2 of Caleb's ribs broken and a piece of rebar through his left thigh, and he had done it through smoke and through fire and through a wall of his own pain, and Caleb had stopped questioning what that dog could sense a long time ago. So Caleb just nodded once very slightly and went back to his coffee. That was when the boys walked in. There were 2 of them, 17, maybe 18. That age where the distance between a bad decision and a worse one is about 3 seconds and a single laugh from a friend. They came through the door loud, too loud for 7 in the morning. The kind of loud that is less about energy and more about performing for each other and for whatever audience happens to be watching. The taller one wore an expensive jacket that had not been bought in this town. He had the easy posture of a kid who had never been told no in any way that mattered. The shorter one moved a half step behind him, the way followers move already laughing before anything funny had been said. Caleb clocked them the moment they entered, not because he was paranoid, because 22 months in a combat zone had taught him to read a room before he knew he was reading it. Exits, distances, hands, eyes, intent. He counted them all in under 3 seconds, and then he tried very hard to go back to his napkin. He watched them scan the diner. He watched them find her. The first thing was just looking. That was forgivable, he told himself. People looked. It meant nothing. Then came the whispering. He could not hear the words. He could hear the tone. That low, shared, conspiratorial noise teenagers make when they think they are invisible and hilarious. The taller one nudged the shorter one. The shorter one covered his mouth. Caleb's jaw tightened. He told himself it was not his business. He told himself people had to fight their own battles sometimes. He told himself he was too tired and too broken to be anyone's solution today. He was still telling himself all of that when the taller one stood up and walked over to her booth. The woman did not look up. Caleb saw her jaw set. He understood immediately that she had already sensed them, that she had already run the calculation in her head, the one she must have run 100 times in 100 different rooms. Ignore it, endure it, outlast it, and maybe if God is merciful, it stops on its own. Hey, the taller one said, leaning on the edge of her table. Does it hurt? She did not look up from her tablet. I am talking to you, the boy said. I heard you, she said. Her voice was flat and controlled and carefully, deliberately empty of emotion. I am choosing not to answer. The shorter one snickered behind him. The taller one took that as permission. Come on, he said louder now. We are just curious. How does that thing work? Can you take it off? What happened to the real one? Storm shifted under the table. Caleb felt it before he saw it. The dog had not gotten up yet. He had only adjusted, just enough to get his weight underneath him, just enough to be ready. The low rumble in his chest had not changed in volume, but something about it had changed in temperature. Please leave me alone, the woman said. That is not very friendly, the taller boy said. He reached out with 2 fingers and flicked her crutch. It slid sideways against the vinyl booth, leaning at an angle that was not stable. The waitress at the counter was now staring very hard at the coffee machine. The trucker had given up all pretense and was now openly watching his own plate. The older couple were having an extremely focused conversation about the salt shakers. Caleb was already half out of his seat. He stopped himself. He did not know these people. He did not know what she wanted. He had seen good intentions go sideways before. He had seen men step in and turn a small situation into a violent one and walk away feeling righteous while the person they had tried to help was still sitting in the wreckage. So he waited, and the room waited, and the boy picked up her crutch. Give that back, she said, and her voice had changed. The flatness was gone. What replaced it was not fear. It was the particular kind of anger that belongs to someone who has spent years compressing fury into composure and has just been pushed 1 inch too far. Or what the boy said. He held the crutch up, grinning, turning to his friend like this was the funniest thing either of them had ever seen. You going to walk after me? The shorter one laughed so hard he bent forward, and something in Caleb went quiet and cold and very, very clear. Storm rose to his feet. He did not bark. He did not lunge. He did what he had been trained to do in the worst rooms in the world, in places nobody on this side of the ocean could pronounce. He moved without sound. 3 steps. 4. He placed himself with a precision that had been drilled into him 1,000 times directly between the woman in the booth and the boy with the crutch in his hand. Hackles raised, ears pinned back, body angled, weight forward. He did not show his teeth yet. He did not have to. The taller boy froze. "Hey," he said. The smile on his face flickered. "Hey, get that dog away from me." Caleb stood up from his booth. He did not hurry. He crossed the distance between his table and theirs in 4 unhurried steps. He stopped on the boy's left side, just outside the boy's reach, and he placed himself in a way that put the boy's body between himself and Storm. His voice was not loud. It was not theatrical. It was the voice of a man who had learned the hard way that the most dangerous tone is the one that does not need volume to mean business. "Put it down," he said. Both boys turned. Caleb was not large in the way movies make large men. He was 6 feet lean, the kind of built that comes from real work and not from a gym. His dark hair was cut short. He had a 4-day beard. He wore a plain jacket with an embroidered patch on the left sleeve that the taller boy did not look at. The boy looked Caleb up and down the way kids look at adults they have decided do not count. "Mind your own business, man. I am making it my business," Caleb said. "We are not doing anything." "You are holding something that does not belong to you," Caleb said, "and you are scaring someone who has not done a single thing to you. Put it down." The boy's eyes flicked to Storm. Storm had not moved an inch. Storm's gaze was locked on the boy's right hand, which was the hand holding the crutch. It was the gaze of a working dog that had already decided that hand was the threat. It was the gaze of an animal who was waiting on one word. The boy looked back at Caleb. "You a cop?" "No," Caleb said. "Then you got no authority here." "You do not need authority," Caleb said quietly. "You just need to do the right thing." For 1 second, something almost shifted. Caleb could see the math happening behind the boy's eyes. The cost of backing down. The cost of not. The friend behind him had stopped laughing. The whole diner had stopped breathing. Then the shorter one said something under his breath. Caleb did not catch all of it. He caught enough. The taller boy smiled, and in a motion so fast and so deliberate that it did not register until after it had happened, he reached past Caleb, leaned over the table, and slapped the woman in the booth across the face. The sound of it cracked through the diner like a gunshot. For exactly 1 second, nobody moved. Then Caleb moved. He moved the way combat medics move when a body hits the ground. Not frantically, not angrily, with a precision that had been drilled into muscle memory through thousands of hours of training he had never fully left behind. His left hand came down on the boy's wrist before the boy could pull his arm back. He applied pressure. A specific, controlled, very deliberate amount in a specific, very deliberate place. The boy's whole body bent toward the table because there was nowhere else for it to go. Caleb walked him forward with his own momentum, pinned the boy's forearm flat against the vinyl, and held him there with about as much effort as it took to hold open a door. It took 4 seconds. The crutch hit the floor. Storm took 1 step closer, his muzzle now 5 inches from the boy's face. He did not bark. He did not growl. He simply opened his mouth just slightly, just enough that the boy could see his teeth, and he held that position with the absolute stillness of an animal who had been trained to wait. The shorter boy had backed against the counter. He was very pale. He had gone from laughing to praying in under 3 seconds. Caleb leaned down close to the taller boy's ear. He did not raise his voice. He did not have to. "Sir," he said, "you are going to apologize to her. Then you are going to walk out of this diner. Then you are going to pray every night for the rest of your life that you never see this dog again." The boy was breathing very hard. There was sweat on his upper lip. "Sorry," the boy said. He said it to the table. "Look at her," Caleb said. The boy looked at her. Her cheek was already darkening. Her eyes were wet, but no tears had fallen. Her hands were flat against the surface of the table, pressing down the way you press down when you need something solid beneath you. "I am sorry," the boy said again, this time louder, this time meant for her. She did not answer. Caleb let go of his wrist. The boy stumbled back. He grabbed his friend's sleeve. He moved toward the door so fast his shoes squeaked on the linoleum. At the door, he stopped, half turned, and his face went red and ugly with the particular kind of humiliation that does not stay humiliation. "You have no idea," he said. His voice cracked. You have no idea who my father is. Caleb just looked at him. My father owns this whole goddamn town, the boy said. You just signed your own death warrant, both of you. He pushed the door open. The wind tore through the diner. The bell over the door rang too loud. Then they were gone, two shapes disappearing into the white wall of the storm. Caleb stood there for a moment longer. Storm did not relax. Storm's eyes had moved. They were no longer on the boy. They were on the front window, locked on something across the parking lot, his body still angled, his weight still forward. Caleb followed the dog's gaze. Through the gap in the falling snow, half hidden behind a pickup truck, was a black SUV with tinted windows, engine running, vapor curling from the tailpipe. And in the driver's seat, a figure was holding up a phone angled toward the diner window. The phone lowered. The SUV reversed slowly, deliberately, and pulled out of the lot, vanishing into the storm. Storm did not stop watching the spot where it had been. If this story already has you feeling something, you are exactly where you need to be. Do me one favor, drop the name of your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story has traveled tonight. Now let us get back to that diner and find out who Caleb Hayes really is and who that woman in the booth was and why his father, 6 months in the ground, was about to become the most important man in the room. The waitress came around from behind the counter. She did not say anything. She just bent down, picked up the crutch, and held it carefully like it was made of something more fragile than aluminum. Caleb turned to the woman. Her cheek was bright red. There would be a handprint within the hour. Her hands were still flat on the table. She was breathing in a slow, deliberate, measured way that Caleb recognized from men he had treated in field hospitals. People who had decided a long time ago that they were not going to let the body run the show. He picked up the crutch from the waitress. He did not set it down on the table. He held it out to her gently with the handle turned toward her hand, the way you offer a tool to someone who knows how to use it. She took it. I am sorry, he said. I should have moved sooner. She looked up at him for the first time. Her eyes were not what he was expecting. Not soft, not grateful, steady. Why didn't you, she said. He did not have a good answer for that. He opened his mouth. He closed it. I told myself it was not my place, he said. I was wrong. She nodded once, not warmly, not coldly, honestly, like someone absorbing a truth she had heard in different forms her whole life. The waitress was hovering. Should I call the police, she asked. Yes, Caleb said. No, the woman said at the same time. They looked at each other. I do not want police, she said. Not today. I want them gone. I want my coffee. I want my morning back. The police will turn this into something else. Then they will be gone, Caleb said. He turned to the waitress. Bring her a fresh cup, on me. The waitress nodded too quickly and disappeared. Caleb stood there for a moment. He was about to walk back to his booth. The woman spoke before he could. Sit down, she said. He looked at her. Please, she said. He sat. Storm followed. He moved around the table to the booth wall to the side closest to the front window. He lay down with his chin on his paws and his eyes still half open and his attention still divided between the lot and the door. Outside, the wind howled. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. The diner had begun very slowly to remember how to make noise again. A coffee cup clinked. The cook said something to the waitress in the back. The trucker by the window paid his bill and left a tip that was bigger than his meal and walked out without looking at anyone, the kind of tip men leave when money is the only apology they know how to make. I am Naomi, the woman said. Naomi Brooks. Caleb, he said. Caleb Hayes. She held out her hand. He took it. Her grip was steady. Her fingers were cold. She let go. She looked at Storm. What is his name? Storm. He is the one I should be thanking, she said. He thinks so too, Caleb said. A small dry laugh escaped her. She winced as it pulled at her cheek. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said something he was not expecting. Mr. Hayes, she said, I was on my way to find you this morning. He went still. I am sorry, he said. What? I was driving up to your shop, she said. Hayes and father. On Caldwell Road. The storm got bad. I stopped here for coffee and to wait it out. I was going to come up there at 8:30. I had your address written down on a sheet of paper in my bag. She paused. Then a boy hit me in the face, she said, and the man I was looking for got up out of his booth. Caleb stared at her. Why, he said, why were you coming to find me? She reached into her bag. She took out an envelope. It was thick. The paper was good quality cream, colored the kind people used when they wanted the words inside to be taken seriously. The flap had been opened, then carefully closed again. She set it on the table between them. Your father wrote to me, she said, 6 months ago, before he died. Caleb felt the air go out of his chest. He did not pick the envelope up. What he said again. It came out quieter this time. I did not know him personally, Naomi said. Not the way you did. He had done some custom work for me years ago, a long time ago when I was just learning how to walk again. He did not charge me. He told me when the time came he might call in a favor. I told him to call any time. I never thought he would. She looked at the envelope. He wrote me 6 months ago. He said he was sick. He said he had a son who was about to be put in a corner by a man who did not lose corners. He said he was going to do everything he could to leave his son a clean shop. And he said if it did not work, if something happened to him before he could finish, would I please come find his boy? Not to give him money. He was very specific about that. To see what I saw and decide if it was worth saving. She looked back up at Caleb. 2 weeks after he wrote that letter, she said your father had a car accident on a stretch of road he had driven for 40 years. I read the obituary online. I have been waiting until the shop situation forced your hand. I was told yesterday by someone who keeps an eye on the local market for me that your supplier just gave you 30 days notice. Caleb had not breathed in a long time. So I came, she said. Today, this morning. She looked at the envelope. I have not opened it, she said. He sealed it before he sent it. He said it was for you. He told me I would know when the time was right. I think the time is right. Caleb looked at the envelope. He looked at her. He looked at Storm, who had not moved, who was watching the front window with an attention that had not lessened by a single degree. He looked at his own hands. They were shaking. He had not let himself shake in 3 years. Outside, the wind drove a fresh wall of snow against the diner glass. The lights flickered once, then steadied. Somewhere in the back, the cook turned the radio on, and an old country song that Caleb's father used to hum while he worked began playing very faintly through the speakers. Caleb reached out and picked up the envelope. His name was on the front in his father's handwriting. The letters were uneven the way they had gotten near the end. There were 3 words above his name written in the same shaky hand. Open this carefully. Caleb's eyes burned. He did not let it show. Naomi did not look away. In her bag, a phone began to vibrate. She did not answer it. She let it ring. In the parking lot somewhere very far down the road, the same black SUV from before turned its lights on for half a second, then off again. Through the snow, Storm's body shifted almost imperceptibly. The low rumble in his chest, the one that had not stopped since the boy had picked up the crutch, deepened by exactly 1 note. Caleb did not see the lights. He was looking at his father's handwriting. He pressed the envelope flat against the table with both hands, like he was holding something down. Tell me everything, he said. His voice did not sound like his own. Tell me everything you know about this man my father was afraid of. Tell me everything about the day my father wrote you. Tell me everything you remember about the year he fixed your chair for free. Start at the beginning. Do not leave anything out. Naomi looked at him for a long, careful moment. Then she nodded. And outside in the storm, a man sitting in a black SUV picked up his phone, scrolled to a contact saved as Mr. V, and pressed call. The phone rang twice somewhere on the other end of the county, in a warm office with leather chairs and a fireplace going against the morning cold. It was answered on the 3rd ring. He is here, the man in the SUV said. He saw me. The dog saw me first. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then a voice, very calm, very quiet, very used to getting its way, said one sentence. "Then we begin tonight." The line went dead. Inside the diner, Caleb Hayes did not yet know any of that. He was looking at his dead father's handwriting and listening to a stranger tell him about a debt he had never known existed. Storm lay at his feet with his ears half up and his eyes on the window. Naomi Brooks held her coffee in both hands and began very carefully at the beginning. And in the booth where 10 minutes earlier 40 people had pretended not to hear a slap, the air finally began to move again. 3 nights later, Caleb Hayes opened his father's old toolbox in the back of the shop, and Storm started growling at the front window before the headlights came up the gravel road. The toolbox was the one his father had carried to work every day for 30 years. Red paint worn down to gray metal at the corners, a dent in the lid from a slipped wrench in 1994. The latches still worked. The smell when Caleb opened it was the same smell as his childhood. Cutting oil and old leather and a faint trace of the cherry pipe tobacco his father had quit in 2008 and had never quite stopped smelling of. Inside, on top of the tray, was an envelope. It had not been there the last time he had opened the box. Walter had put it there. Caleb knew it without asking, the way you know things about men you have known your whole life. Walter Doyle was 67 years old. He had worked beside Caleb's father for 35 years. He had been Caleb's father's best friend and his pallbearer, and the man who had taught Caleb how to set a wheel bearing when Caleb was 11. Walter had handed him this toolbox on the morning of the funeral and had said, "Only your dad wanted you to have this, and now is not the time to look through it." Now was the time. Caleb had read the letter Naomi had handed him 3 days ago. He had read it 3 more times since. He had not slept much. He had spent the last 3 days walking around the inside of his own life like a man checking a house for cracks in the foundation. His father's letter to him, written in the same shaky handwriting, had said this, that a man named Garrett Vance had come to the shop 3 times in the last year, that the first 2 times Vance had been polite, that the third time Vance had stopped pretending, that Vance had told Caleb's father in plain and quiet language that old men should be careful on mountain roads in winter, and that 2 weeks later Caleb's father had gone off the road on a curve he had driven 1,000 times with brake lines that the state trooper had ruled were within normal wear. His father had also written, "My son, if you are reading this, the time has come. Walter has the rest. Trust him. Trust the dog. And whatever you do, do not face this man alone. There is a woman. Her name is Naomi Brooks. I helped her once. She will help you now. She does not know yet what I have asked of her, but she will come." Caleb had read that part 4 times. The toolbox in front of him now held the second envelope, the one Walter had been keeping, the one his father had said Walter would know when to deliver. Walter had delivered it that afternoon. He had set it on top of the toolbox without a word and walked back out to Bay 2 and gone back to changing the oil on a Ford F-250 like nothing had happened. Caleb opened it now. There was a photograph inside. It was a photograph of his father taken 2 months before he died, standing in front of the bay door of the shop. He looked thinner than Caleb remembered. He was holding up a small notebook. The notebook was open. On the open page in his father's writing was a list of 6 names, 6 men, 6 shop owners across 3 counties. Each name had a date next to it. Some had a small mark beside them. A check, an X, a question mark. Underneath the photograph in the envelope was the notebook itself. Caleb sat down on an overturned bucket and held the notebook in both hands. He understood as he opened it that his father had not just been protecting his own shop. His father had been keeping a record for 3 years. The notebook was full, names, dates, license plate numbers, a description of every visit a man named Garrett Vance had ever made to the shop, the names of the lawyers who had come with him, the names of the suppliers who had stopped delivering, and the dates the deliveries had stopped, and the names of the new customers who had appeared at Vance Automotive Group within 30 days. There was a section in the back written more carefully than the rest, that listed the 6 other shop owners by name. Beside each name, there was a single line of plain language. What had happened to each man? 2 had sold to Vance. 1 had closed. 1 had moved out of state. 1 had died of a sudden heart attack at 51. 1 was still hanging on in Bitterroot's neighboring county by a thread. His father had been building a case. Caleb closed the notebook. He sat there for a long time in the smell of cutting oil and cherry tobacco, with his dead father's handwriting in his hands, and his dog asleep at his feet, and a kind of cold understanding settling into his chest. That was when Storm came up off the floor. He did it without noise, just a sudden full stand, hackles already lifting, ears swinging forward, then locking back. His head turned very slowly toward the front of the shop, toward the office, toward the front window that faced the gravel road. Then Caleb heard it. Tires. Coming up the drive slow. He stood. He put the notebook back in the envelope. He put the envelope back in the toolbox. He closed the lid. He walked to the office. A black sedan was pulling up to the front of the shop. 2 men got out of the back. A third man got out of the driver's seat. None of them were dressed for shop work. The man in the back wore a long charcoal coat over a suit. He moved like a man who had never had to hurry. His hair was silver at the temples. He was somewhere on the heavy side of 63. His face was the kind of face you saw on a billboard for a Chamber of Commerce dinner. Caleb had never met him. Caleb knew exactly who he was. Storm did not bark. Storm did not growl. Storm walked calm and slow to the office doorway and sat down at Caleb's left side, his weight balanced, his eyes locked, his entire body silent, the way only working dogs go silent, the kind of silence that is louder than a snarl. Garrett Vance opened the front door of the shop without knocking. "Mr. Hayes," he said. His voice was warm. It did not match his eyes. Caleb did not move from the office doorway. "I am Garrett Vance," the man said. "I own Vance Automotive Group. I am the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce here in Bitterroot. I knew your father briefly. I was very sorry to hear about his accident." Caleb said nothing. Vance smiled. It was a practiced smile. It had been used on a lot of people in a lot of rooms. "I have come on a friendly visit," Vance said. "I will not take much of your time." He stepped further into the office. The 2 men with him stayed by the door. They did not look like lawyers. One of them did in the careful, expensive way. The other looked like a man who had carried things for a living before someone had given him a suit. "I understand," Vance said, "that you have recently come into a partnership with Brooks Accessibility Industries." "That is, of course, you're right, but I think we should have an honest conversation, you and I, about what that is going to mean for this shop, for your employees, and for this town." Caleb finally spoke. "You drove up here in a snowstorm to be friendly." Vance's smile did not move. "I drove up here," he said, "because I think we have a misunderstanding, and I prefer to address misunderstandings before they become something worse." Storm's gaze did not break from Vance's face. Caleb watched Vance carefully. He watched the man's hands. He watched his eyes. He watched the way his weight settled onto his back foot. When he spoke, the way liars settle into themselves when they decide which version of the truth they are about to use. "Whatever you have to say," Caleb said, "you can say it standing where you are." Vance's eyes flicked to Storm. The dog's stillness had finally registered. "That is a fine animal," Vance said. "Carefully." "He works," Caleb said. Vance nodded slowly. He took a breath. He folded his hands in front of him in a gesture that he probably believed looked thoughtful. "I am going to be very direct with you, Mr. Hayes," he said. "Your father was not a wealthy man. He was a proud man. Proud men leave their sons hard inheritances. Your shop is not viable. You know this? Your suppliers know this. Your bank knows this. Bringing in outside money does not change the underlying numbers. It only delays the conversation." Caleb did not answer. "I am prepared," Vance said, "to make you a very generous offer for this property. Above market, cash. I will absorb your debt. I will offer your foreman, Mr. Doyle, a senior position at our flagship location in Missoula. Your other men I will keep on here under our flag. Nobody loses a paycheck. Nobody loses a Christmas. You walk away with your daughter's college paid for and your father's name retired with dignity. He paused. Or he said more quietly, you can refuse. His voice did not change. The smile did not change. But the temperature in the office did. You can refuse, he said, and you can keep fighting the river. And you can keep losing suppliers. And you can keep getting visits from auditors who do not find anything this time. And you can sit out here on this road in this snow with your daughter, and you can wait to see what the river does next. Caleb felt Storm's weight shift just slightly against his left leg. The dog did not growl. The silence in his chest had become deafening. Caleb looked at Vance for a long moment. You knew my father, he said. I did, Vance said. Briefly. How briefly? Vance opened his mouth to answer. Caleb spoke before he could. 3 visits, Caleb said. The first one was in March of last year. The second one was in August. The third one was on the 18th of January, 14 days before he died. You came alone, you sat in that chair, you drank his coffee, and you told him that old men should be careful on mountain roads in winter. Vance's face did not move, but something behind his eyes did. A small, single, involuntary flicker. The kind of thing only a man trained to look for it would see. Caleb saw it. You came up here this morning, Caleb said quietly, because you were not sure how much I knew. Now you know. Vance recovered very fast. His face smoothed. His smile came back. But his hands folded in front of him had tightened by exactly 1 degree. Mr. Hayes, he said, I came here in good faith. You came here in a sedan with 2 men in suits, Caleb said. One of them is armed. The other one has done time. I do not know what he did time for. I just know he has done it. I can see it in the way he stands. The 2 men by the door went very still. Storm rose to his feet. He still did not growl. Vance held Caleb's gaze for a long moment. You served, he said. Caleb did not answer. 22 months, Vance said. Combat medic. 2 deployments. I had my office pull your file before I drove up here. Your wife passed 3 years ago. You have a 9-year-old daughter, Lily. She is in 3rd grade at Bitterroot Elementary. She walks home from the bus stop every afternoon at 3:47, alone 4 blocks. Carries a blue backpack. Likes a stuffed otter. Caleb did not move, but every muscle in his body had become wire. I tell you this, Vance said quietly, almost gently, not as a threat. As a courtesy, I want you to know that I have been thorough. I want you to know what kind of conversation we are having. I want you to take my offer, Mr. Hayes, and I want you to take it before the conversation becomes something neither of us can walk away from. Storm took 1 slow step forward. Caleb put a hand down on fingertips against the dog's shoulder. He spoke without raising his voice. Mr. Vance, he said, you are going to walk out of my shop. You are going to get back in your car. And the next time you say my daughter's name in any room for any reason, I am going to come find you. I am not going to send a lawyer. I am not going to call the police. I am going to come myself. Do you understand me? Vance held his eyes. For 1/2 second, the Chamber of Commerce smile slipped completely off his face. What was underneath it was old and tired and patient and absolutely without any decency at all. Then the smile came back. You have a good evening, Mr. Hayes, Vance said. He turned. He nodded to his men. They walked out. The door swung shut. The sedan started. The headlights washed once across the front of the shop, and then they were backing down the gravel drive slow and unhurried, the way a man drives when he wants to make sure you are still watching. Caleb stood in the office for a long time. He did not move until the taillights had disappeared past the tree line. Then he locked the front door. He walked back to the bench. He picked up the phone. He called Naomi. He told her in flat, steady language exactly what had been said. He told her what Vance had said about Lily. He heard the pause on the other end of the line, the one that was not hesitation, the one that was a woman somewhere in a hotel room 3 towns over, going very quiet because she was thinking very fast. I am driving up tonight, she said. The roads are bad. I am driving up tonight, she said again. Caleb did not argue. He hung up. He walked out into the bay. Walter was there leaning against the workbench with his arms crossed, a rag in one hand. He had been there the whole time. Caleb realized that now. Walter had been 10 feet from the office door on the other side of the wall, listening to every word. You heard, Caleb said. I heard, Walter said. The two men looked at each other. You knew, Caleb said. About the notebook. I knew, Walter said. How long? 3 years. Caleb sat down heavily on a stool. Walter set the rag down. He came over slowly. He sat down on the other stool, the way old men sit down with care for his back. He looked at his hands. Then he looked at Caleb. Your father came to me, he said, in the spring of 2023. He sat right where you are. He said a man had been coming around. He said he did not trust him. He said he was going to start writing things down, and he said, if anything happened to him before he could finish, I was to give the book to you when the right time came. Walter's voice was not steady. He was my best friend for 35 years, Walter said. I owed him this. I owed him keeping my mouth shut while he did what he was doing. I owed him not making it worse by getting in the way. The day he died, I drove up to that curve and I sat there for 2 hours. I knew. I have known since that morning. I have not slept a full night since. Caleb did not say anything. I am not a complicated man, Walter said. I have been a mechanic since I was 20. I have lived in the same house for 41 years. I am not anything other than what I look like. But I loved your father, and that means I love you, and I am not letting that man near your girl. Caleb's eyes burned. He did not let it show. He stood up. He put a hand on Walter's shoulder. He held it there for 1 second. Then he went home to get his daughter. Lily was at the kitchen table doing math when he walked in. She looked up when she heard the front door close. She looked at his face. She closed her notebook without being told. Are we leaving? She asked. For a few days, he said. Storm came in behind him, snow on his fur. He walked over to Lily and pressed his head against her side. She put her hand in his fur without looking the way she always did, like he was furniture that she loved. Where she asked. Somewhere safe, he said. Pack a bag, warm clothes, the otter, nothing else. She nodded once. She got up. She went to her room. She did not ask him why. That Caleb thought was the part that hurt the most. While Lily packed in her room, Caleb sat down at the kitchen table for 30 seconds and let his hands rest flat on the wood. The grain of that table was the same grain his father had run his hands across for 40 years. The kitchen had been his father's kitchen. The window over the sink looked out on the same yard his father had stood in on a summer evening, the day Caleb had come home from his second deployment, and his father had not said anything, had only put one hand on the back of his neck and held it there for 10 seconds, the way men do when there are no words left. Caleb had told himself for 3 years that he was holding the shop together for his father. Sitting at that kitchen table at 1 a.m. with a rifle on the table and a daughter packing a bag in the next room, he understood for the first time that his father had been holding the shop together for him. Lily came back into the kitchen with a backpack on. She had brushed her own hair. She had put her own boots on. She held the otter against her chest with one arm. She stopped in the doorway. Dad, she said, yeah, are we going to be okay? He looked at her. He had told her yes 2 days ago in the same kitchen when she had asked him about the shop, and he had not been sure he believed it. He was sure now. Yes, he said. We are going to be okay. She nodded once, the way her mother used to nod, a small, deliberate nod that meant the matter was closed. Then she walked over and she put her free hand into his, and her hand was small and cold and perfectly steady, and Caleb Hayes understood, sitting in his father's kitchen with his daughter's hand in his and his father's dog at his feet, that there were some inheritances a man did not get to refuse, and there were some inheritances a man should not want to. He squeezed her hand once. Then he stood up and he picked up the rifle and he went to the front window to wait for Naomi. He locked every window in the house. He pulled the curtains. He took his father's old hunting rifle out of the closet, checked it, set it on the kitchen table. He packed 3 days of food. He filled a thermos. He put Storm's working harness in the truck. Naomi got there at 2:17 in the morning. She came up the drive in a black SUV with chains on the tires. Caleb watched her come from the front window. He watched the way she got out of the car, the careful, deliberate movement, the crutch, the bag over her shoulder. The fact that she did not look at the house first. She looked at the tree line. He met her at the door. He took her bag. "Where is she?" Naomi said. "Asleep on the couch," he said. Naomi walked in. She looked at Lily asleep with her head on Storm's flank. She looked at the rifle on the table. She looked at Caleb. "He has people coming," Caleb said. "Not tonight. He wants me to spend tonight scared. He will come another night." "I know," she said. Then she said, "There is something else you need to know. About me." He looked at her. She set her bag down. She lowered herself into a chair. She rested both hands on the head of her crutch. 2019, she said. "I was 30. I was driving on a state road outside of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I had just signed my first major contract. I was driving a vehicle that had been serviced 2 weeks earlier at a Vance Automotive Group flagship location in that city. The right front wheel separated from the axle at 62 miles an hour. The car flipped 4 times. I lost my left leg below the knee." Caleb did not breathe. "The investigation," she said, "was paid for. The mechanic of record disappeared. The settlement was generous. I signed a non-disclosure agreement because at the time, I was 29 years old, and I did not have the strength to fight. I took the money and I built my company, and I told myself I was building it because I wanted to help people like me. And that is true. But it is not the only true thing." She looked at him steadily. "I have been waiting 7 years," she said, "for the chance to make sure he could not do it to anybody else. I am not telling you this is about revenge. I am telling you it is about a debt I owe to a younger woman I used to be who signed a piece of paper she should not have signed because she was scared and because she was alone and because nobody at that time told her she did not have to." She paused. "When your father wrote me," she said, "I did not know it was Vance who had hurt him. I did not know until last week. I came up here because your father once fixed my chair for free and never sent me a bill, and because his letter was a kind one, and because I had a debt of decency to a dead man. And then last Tuesday, my legal team finished pulling records I had asked them to pull on every shop owner in 3 counties around Bitterroot who had filed a complaint against Vance Automotive Group in the last decade. And I saw the pattern, and I saw what your father had been trying to document. And I understood, sitting in my office at 3 in the morning, what your father had really asked me to come do." She looked at him very carefully. "He did not just ask me to help his son," she said. "He asked me to finish what he had started." The kitchen was very quiet. "I am not telling you this so you will trust me less," she said. "I am telling you this so you will trust me more. Because if I do not tell you the whole reason I am here, then I am just another person standing in your kitchen with my own version of the truth. And we have had enough of those tonight." Caleb sat down across from her. For a long moment, he did not say anything. Then he reached across the table and turned the rifle very slightly so that the barrel was no longer pointed in her direction. A small, tight smile pulled at the corner of her mouth. Outside, the wind picked up. The first hard band of the next storm front began to push down out of the mountains. Storm lifted his head from the couch. He looked at the front window. He did not get up, not yet. Carla called Caleb at 3:40 in the morning. She called from a payphone outside a gas station on Highway 12 because she did not trust her own phone anymore. Her voice was shaking. "I have to tell you something," she said. "I should have told you months ago. My son works for Vance at the Missoula location. He came home over the 4th of July weekend last year, and he was drunk, and he said something he should not have said. He said his boss had ordered something done to your father's truck. He said it was supposed to look like an accident. He said he did not do it himself. He said he just heard who did. And she said, and her voice cracked, "I told myself it was the bourbon. I told myself my son was scared and showing off. I told myself I did not hear what I heard. She was crying now. I have a name, she said. I have the name of the man who did it. I have been holding it for 6 months. I am going to give it to you. She gave it to him. Caleb wrote it down on the back of a takeout menu with a hand that did not shake. He thanked her. He told her not to go home. He told her to drive to the sheriff's office in town, ask for Tom Whitaker, and tell him Caleb Hayes had sent her. He told her Tom Whitaker would know what to do. He hung up. He looked at Naomi. I have a name, he said. She nodded slowly. He stood up. He walked to the back door. He opened it. The cold rolled in off the porch. The yard was a smooth white field under the moon. The tree line at the back of the property was a black wall. Storm came up beside him. The dog stopped at the threshold. He did not step out. He stared at one specific point in the snow 20 feet from the porch near the corner of the old shed. His ears swung forward. The low rumble in his chest rose into something Caleb had not heard in 3 days. Not a growl, a working dog signal, the one that meant here, right here. Caleb pulled on a coat. He pulled on boots. He took a flashlight. He walked out into the cold. Storm walked beside him, every step deliberate. At the corner of the shed, the dog stopped. He pawed once at the ground. Then he sat down and looked up at Caleb and waited. Caleb knelt. He brushed the snow aside. Underneath was hard-packed dirt, frozen but recently disturbed, within the last year. He could tell from the way the pine needles lay over it. He went back to the shed. He came back with a shovel. The ground was hard. It took him 40 minutes. Naomi came out halfway through, wrapped in his coat over hers, and stood at the edge of the porch and watched because she could not help dig, and she would not pretend otherwise. At 20 inches down, the shovel hit metal. Caleb cleared the rest by hand. It was a flat metal box, military surplus, sealed at the lid. His father had had 3 of them in the basement, his whole life used for storing carburetors and old paperwork. Caleb pulled it free. He carried it inside. He set it on the kitchen table. He pried the lid open. Inside were ledgers, 3 of them, bank statements, photocopies, photographs of cash exchanges, a list of off-the-books accounts at 3 different small regional banks with signatures and dates and amounts. A photocopy of a check made out from a Vance Shell Company to the same county building inspector who had shown up uninvited at the Hayes shop 2 weeks ago. Letters, statements, names. The whole machine of Garrett Vance written down on paper, locked in a metal box, buried in the frozen dirt 20 feet from the kitchen door of a dead man's son. His father had finished the case. He had buried it where Storm would find it. Because his father had known Storm would come home with him. His father had known the dog would tell the boy where to look. Caleb sat down at the table. He covered his face with his hands. For the first time in 3 years, he made a sound that came up from somewhere old. Somewhere he had not let himself touch since he had buried his wife. Somewhere he had not let himself touch since he had buried his father. Naomi did not move from the doorway. Storm lay down across his feet. A long time later, Caleb wiped his face. He picked up the takeout menu with the name on the back. He looked at it. Then he looked at Naomi. Tomorrow, he said, we take this to the FBI. She nodded. There was a soft knock on the kitchen door. Caleb's hand was on the rifle before the knock had stopped. Through the window in the porch light was a face he had not expected. Tyler Vance. Garrett Vance's 17-year-old son. Standing on the porch in a winter coat with snow in his hair and tears frozen on his cheeks. Alone, no car visible at the end of the drive. He had walked. Mr. Hayes, the boy said through the door. His voice was raw. Mr. Hayes, please. He is sending people for your daughter tonight. Storm stood up. The wind outside roared, and every clock in the house all at once seemed to stop. Caleb Hayes opened the kitchen door 6 inches, and Storm walked through the gap before he did. The dog placed himself between Tyler Vance and the threshold without a sound. Hackles up, body angled. The low rumble in his chest, the same one that had been there in the diner 3 nights ago. Tyler did not move. He kept his hands where Caleb could see them. He was breathing too fast and his lips were blue at the edges. I walked, the boys said. From the highway. 3 miles. He thinks I am at my grandmother's tonight. He does not know I am here. Caleb looked past him. The driveway was empty. The road beyond the tree line was empty. The wind was rolling in long white sheets across the front yard. Inside, he said. Tyler stepped in. Storm did not relax. The boy stood by the door, dripping melted snow onto the floor, not moving past where Storm allowed him to stand. Naomi was already on her feet at the kitchen table, the metal box closed in front of her, her crutch upright in her hand, the way some women hold a purse and other women hold something else. Caleb shut the door. He locked it. Talk, he said. Tyler looked at him. He sent 4 men, the boy said. They were in the office tonight. I was supposed to be in bed. The door was open a crack. I heard everything. He told them tonight was the night. He told them to take your daughter from the house and bring her to the lake property. He said you would trade everything in that metal box for her by sunrise. He said if you fought, they were to make it look like a home invasion gone wrong. Caleb did not move. How long ago, he said. An hour, Tyler said. Maybe a little less. I came out the back of the house. I went over the fence. I ran to the highway. A trucker stopped about a mile from your road. He let me ride in the cab. He let me out at the bottom of your drive. I do not have a phone. He took my phone. Storm took one slow step closer to the boy. Tyler did not flinch. I know, the boy said. I know what I did at the diner. I know what I let happen. I know what my father is. I have known for a long time. I'm here because if I sit in that house tonight and that little girl is in your arms tomorrow morning under a sheet, I will not survive it. I am not asking you to forgive me. I am asking you to let me help. Caleb watched him. For 3 full seconds, he did not say anything. Storm watched the boy. Storm's eyes did the work of judgment that human eyes are too slow for. The dog turned his head. He looked up at Caleb. He sat down. Caleb let out a breath. Lily, he said. She was already standing in the hallway in her pajamas and wool socks, holding the otter against her chest. She had heard everything. She was not crying. She was 9 years old, and she was looking at her 9 years old, and she was looking at her father with eyes that had decided somewhere in the last 3 days that she was old enough to be told the truth. Get dressed, he said. Warm clothes, boots, now. She turned and ran. Caleb walked to the table. He picked up the phone. He dialed a number he had written on a piece of paper that morning. It was answered on the second ring. This is Tom Whitaker, Sheriff Caleb said. There was a pause. Mr. Hayes, the voice on the other end, said. Sheriff Caleb said, Carla Hadley should be at your office in the next 20 minutes. She has information about the man who killed my father. There are 4 men coming to my house tonight to take my daughter. They are coming on Garrett Vance's orders. I have evidence buried 20 feet from my back porch that puts him in a federal cell for the rest of his natural life. I need to know before I say another word to you exactly who you are. The pause on the other end was not long. Mr. Hayes, Tom Whitaker said, I have been waiting 2 years for this phone call. The voice on the line was steady. It had the steadiness of an older man who had spent his whole adult life choosing his words on a radio. I served with your father in the National Guard, Whitaker said. I knew him for 41 years. I drove past that curve the morning of his accident, and I have not slept right since. I have been working with a federal task force out of Helena for 14 months on Garrett Vance. I have not been able to move on him because I have not had a witness inside, and I have not had documentation that survived chain of custody. If you have what you say you have, then we move tonight. I have it, Caleb said. Then listen to me very carefully, Whitaker said. I have 2 units I trust on the night shift. I am pulling them now. We will be at your house in 18 minutes. Do not engage the men he is sending. Get your daughter out the back. Take her to the old fire road that cuts behind your property. There is a turnout half a mile in. We will meet you there. Caleb's eyes flicked to Tyler. Sheriff, he said, the boy is here. Tyler Vance, he came on his own. He is the reason I know they are coming. A breath on the other end. Bring him, Whitaker said. The line went dead. Caleb turned. Lily was already at the kitchen door in her boots, her coat, her hat. The otter zipped inside her jacket against her chest. She looked at him. "I am ready," she said. He picked her up and held her against his chest for 1 second. Then he set her down and he went to work. He moved through the house the way he had moved through buildings in Kandahar, not panicked, not rushed, precise. He killed the lights. He locked the front door from the inside. He took the rifle off the kitchen table and put 2 extra magazines in his coat. He took the metal box from the table and slid it into a duffel bag. He put the notebook from his father's toolbox in the same bag. He zipped it. He slung it over his shoulder. He looked at Naomi. "You take her," he said. "Out the back, into the trees. Tyler walks 10 feet behind you. Storm walks point. I follow last. I do not want her hand in mine until we are at the fire road. I do not want her in the line of fire if they come up the drive." Naomi nodded once. She held out a hand to Lily without saying a word. Lily took it. The 4 of them moved out the back door. The cold hit Caleb's face like an open hand. The wind had dropped just for a moment the way it sometimes did between bands of a storm. The yard was all moonlight and unbroken white. The tree line at the back of the property was 80 yards off. Storm went first low and quieted his body, a dark moving line against the snow. Naomi went second, her crutch sinking, then lifting her arm around Lily's shoulders. Tyler went third. Caleb went last, the rifle low across his body, his head turning every 5 steps, scanning the road to shed the corners. They reached the trees. It was at the trees that Storm stopped. He did not bark. He turned his head. His ears swung forward. He looked back at the house. Caleb dropped to one knee in the snow. 2 sets of headlights had just turned off the county road and onto his drive. They were coming slow. No siren, no flashers. 2 vehicles. "That is them," Tyler whispered. Caleb looked at him. "Go," he said. "With Naomi. With my daughter, now. Stay on the dog. He will get you to the road." Tyler hesitated for half a second. "You are not coming," he said. "I am coming," Caleb said. "I am going to slow them down so they do not come up that fire road behind you." "Storm," the dog turned to him. Caleb pointed at Lily. "Her," he said. Storm understood. Storm always understood. The dog moved without sound to Lily's left side. He pressed his shoulder against her hip. He looked up at her once. Then he turned forward and began to lead. Naomi looked at Caleb across 10 feet of moonlight and snow. "Do not be a hero," she said. "I am not," he said. "I am being a father." She held his eyes for 1 more second. Then she turned. The 4 of them, dormed Lily. Naomi Tyler disappeared into the trees. Caleb moved back along the tree line parallel to the house until he could see the front. The 2 black vehicles had pulled up to the porch. 4 men got out. They were dressed for work. 2 of them carried sidearms openly. The other 2 carried tactical bags. They were professionals, not soldiers, mercenaries on a private payroll. Caleb could read it in their movements. They did not knock. They split. 2 went to the front door. 2 moved around the side of the house toward the back. Caleb counted his breaths. He lifted the rifle. He did not aim at the men. He aimed at the engine block of the lead vehicle. He fired once. The shot cracked across the yard. The front of the vehicle shuddered. Steam hissed up out of the hood. The 4 men dropped instantly into cover. 2 behind the porch posts. 2 against the side of the house. He had taken the lead vehicle out of the equation. They could still leave in the second one, but not fast and not silent. He moved. He did not stay in one spot. He had been a combat medic, but every SEAL was first a SEAL. He shifted along the tree line at a low run 20 yards left, then dropped flat. He fired once more into the rear axle of the second vehicle. Steam and a metal crack. The rear suspension dropped on one side. 2 cars now, both crippled. The men returned fire. Suppressed weapons controlled bursts into the trees where he had been 20 seconds ago, and was not now. Caleb crawled another 15 yards on his belly. He stopped behind a fallen pine. He waited. He heard them shouting. He heard one of them on a radio. He heard the words mountain road and walking and dog. He smiled very faintly in the dark. You should have come better prepared, he thought. Then he heard sirens. They came up the county road in a long building wail. 2 sets, 4 sets, 6, then more, then more. Tom Whitaker had not pulled 2 units. He had pulled half the county and called in 2 more. The 4 men at the house heard the sirens too. They tried to run. They did not get 50 yards down the drive before 3 Bitterroot County sheriff's vehicles came over the rise and put them on the ground in the snow. Caleb did not get up from behind the pine until he saw Tom Whitaker's silhouette step out of the lead cruiser and walk toward the porch with a shotgun against his shoulder. He stood up. He put the rifle on safe. He walked out of the trees with his hands away from his body. Tom Whitaker turned toward him. The sheriff was 60 years old. He had a white mustache and gray eyes and a gait that had come back from the Persian Gulf in 1991 and never quite stopped favoring the left knee. He looked at Caleb. He looked at the rifle low across Caleb's body. He looked at the disabled vehicles in the drive. "Mr. Hayes," he said, "are you hurt?" "No, sir," Caleb said. "Your daughter, in the trees with Naomi Brooks and with Tyler Vance." Whitaker nodded once. "I have a unit on the fire road," he said. "They will be picked up in 5 minutes. They are safe." Caleb closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, Whitaker was looking at him with something that was not quite a smile and not quite anything else. The look of an older man who had carried a private grief for a long time and was finally at the start of putting it down. "Where is he?" Caleb said. "Garrett Vance," Whitaker said, "is in his office 2 miles north of town, drinking a glass of bourbon and waiting for a call from his men that is not coming. We have a federal warrant. It was signed in 3 hours ago by a judge in Helena. We were not going to serve it tonight. We were going to serve it tomorrow morning. Then I got your call." He looked at Caleb steadily. "I would, like Whitaker said, for you to ride along with me for the arrest. That is not standard. I am asking you anyway." "As your father's friend," Caleb did not have to think about it. "Yes, sir," he said. The sheriff nodded. Then he turned and gave instructions to his deputies in the county and the FBI agents who had been tracking Vance for 14 months from a desk in Helena, and within 20 minutes a convoy was rolling through the snow toward Garrett Vance's office. Caleb rode in the front passenger seat of Tom Whitaker's cruiser. He held the duffel bag with his father's notebook and his father's metal box on his lap. The wipers cleared snow in a slow, steady rhythm. Whitaker did not speak much. He did not need to. The 2 of them sat in the cab of that cruiser like men who had known each other their whole lives, even though they had not, because they had loved the same dead man, and that was enough. They came up Vance's drive at 4:07 in the morning. 3 vehicles. No sirens, just headlights. Vance saw the headlights through his office window. He stood up. He set down his glass. He walked to the front door of his own house and opened it himself. He was wearing a suit at 4 in the morning. Of course he was. Tom Whitaker walked up the steps with the warrant in his hand. "Mr. Vance," Whitaker said, "you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, racketeering, money laundering, and the murder of Mr. Daniel Hayes on the 18th of January last year." Vance did not look at Whitaker. He looked past him. He looked at Caleb, standing at the bottom of the steps with the duffel bag over his shoulder. For 1 second, the whole rehearsed face that Garrett Vance had spent 30 years building came apart. What was underneath it was a small, frightened, very ordinary old man who had finally, after a lifetime of breaking, other men run out of men he could break. He did not say anything. He let them put him in handcuffs. He let them lead him to the back of a cruiser. As the door closed, Caleb walked over. He stopped 6 feet from the cruiser. He looked through the glass. Vance looked back at him. Caleb did not speak. He just held up the duffel bag once very briefly so that Vance could see it. Then he turned and walked away. In the trees behind his house 90 minutes earlier, Storm had led Naomi and Lily and Tyler half a mile down the fire road to a turnout where two deputies had already been waiting with a heater running in the and a thermos of cocoa and a wool blanket. Lily had drunk the cocoa with both mittens around the cup. Naomi had sat across from her with her crutch beside the seat and had not let go of the little girl's free hand for 1 second. Tyler had sat in the back by himself with his face in his hands, and he had not made a sound, but his shoulders had shaken in the way a boy's shoulders shake when he is finally letting himself feel the weight of a father. Storm had laid down on the floor of the cab between them all. He had not slept. He had not been asked to. The federal trial began 4 months later in Helena. It lasted 11 days. The notebook was entered into evidence. The metal box was entered into evidence. Bank records pulled from the off-the-books accounts in 3 regional banks were entered into evidence. Carla Hadley took the stand on the 3rd day and told the court in a voice that did not shake what her son had told her at her kitchen table over the 4th of July weekend, 8 months before her boss's father had been killed. Her son took the stand on the 5th day, granted limited immunity, and testified for 6 hours about the operations of Vance Automotive Group. The man whose name Carla had written on the back of a takeout menu took the stand on the 7th day and broke down in his 2nd hour of testimony and named on the record the date and the time and the wrench he had used on the brake line of a 62-year-old man's pickup truck on a Tuesday night in January. Tom Whitaker took the stand on the 8th day. He spoke for 40 minutes. He did not editorialize. He did not look once at Vance. When he stepped down, he walked past the defense table without turning his head, and he sat in the gallery beside Caleb, and he did not move for the rest of the day. Tyler Vance was not asked to testify against his father. The federal prosecutor, a woman named Adele Ferris from the Helena office, made a specific decision not to put a 17-year-old boy on the stand against his own blood. The case did not need it. The case had everything it needed. Tyler had on his own walked into the FBI field office in Missoula on the morning after the arrest and given a 4-hour statement about what he had heard in his father's office that night. That statement was sealed. It was used in the plea negotiations of 2 of Vance's lieutenants. It never appeared in open court. Tyler pled guilty to a misdemeanor charge of failing to report an imminent crime. He was sentenced to 12 months of probation, 200 hours of community service, and mandatory weekly counseling. He served his community service hours at a Veterans Assistance Center in Missoula, sweeping floors and stacking boxes and keeping his mouth shut. He did not ask Caleb for forgiveness. Caleb noted that. He noted it as a thing in the boy's favor. Garrett Vance was convicted on every count. He was sentenced to 25 years in a federal facility. He was 64 when the gavel came down. The math at his age was not lost on anyone in that courtroom. Caleb did not watch the sentencing. He had decided the night before that he had given Garrett Vance enough of his life. He spent that morning at his daughter's school watching her in a Thanksgiving pageant in which she played a pilgrim and forgot her one line and then improvised a better one. And he laughed for the first time in a year, the kind of laugh that comes up out of you when you are not ready for it, and his eyes burned and he did not wipe them. 6 months after that, on a Tuesday morning in May, Caleb Hayes stood at the front of the bay, one of his shop, and looked up at the new sign. It had been Lily's idea. The old sign had read Hayes and Father. The new sign read Hayes, Father and Daughter. Lily had drawn the comma herself on a piece of notebook paper and had presented the design to him at the kitchen table. He had taken it to the sign shop in town, and the man there had carved it exactly the way she had drawn it. The letters were a little uneven. The comma was a little big. Caleb had told the sign maker to leave them exactly that way. Walter Doyle was up on a ladder tightening the last bolt. Jerome Pike was standing on the ground below, holding the ladder steady and offering a stream of unhelpful commentary. Carla Hadley was at the front desk on the phone with a customer telling them in her professional voice that yes, they were now booking 3 weeks out, and yes, that was a good problem to have. Naomi was inside of the office going over the new training program with 2 new hires. The first cohort of the Community Anchor Repair Initiative, A young woman from Helena who had come back from Iraq with a missing arm and a steady hand. A man in his 50s who had spent 20 years in a wheelchair and 20 more being told by every shop in 2 states that there was no place for him on a working floor. They were both laughing at something Naomi had said. Naomi was laughing too. Caleb watched her through the office window for a long moment. Storm sat at his side. The dog was 7 now. The scar on his face had not faded. Neither had the steadiness behind his eyes. He looked up at Caleb and pressed his shoulder against Caleb's leg the way he always did when he wanted Caleb to remember that he was there. Caleb put his hand on the top of the dog's head. Lily came running out of the office. She had a juice box in one hand and a wrench in the other, which was a combination that Caleb had given up trying to make sense of. She stopped beside him. She looked up at the sign. "Dad," she said. "Yeah, it is straight," she said. "It is," he said. She leaned her head against his hip. "Grandpa would like it," she said. "He would," he said. A truck pulled into the lot. It was an old Ford F-150, faded blue paint. The driver got out slowly. He was 17 years old. He was wearing a clean denim jacket and a clean pair of work boots that had been bought very recently in a size his father had never paid for. Tyler Vance walked across the lot. He stopped 10 feet from Caleb. He did not come closer. He waited. Storm watched him. Storm did not growl. Caleb looked at the boy for a long moment. "Mr. Hayes," Tyler said, "I know I do not have the right to ask, but I am 18 in 2 months. I have finished my probation. I have finished my community hours. I have not seen my father in 7 months. I am not going to. I have my GED. I do not want to go to college. I want to learn a trade. I want to learn this trade from you. I will sweep the floor for a year. I will not ask for a paycheck for the first 90 days. I just want you to give me a chance to become something other than my last name." Caleb did not answer right away. He looked down at Storm. The dog looked up at him. Then the dog looked at the boy. Then the dog walked slowly the 10 feet across the lot. He stopped in front of Tyler. He sniffed the boy's hand once. Then he sat down at the boy's feet and looked back at Caleb and waited. Caleb let out a breath he had been holding for it felt like 3 years. "Walter?" He called up the ladder. "Yeah," Walter said. "We have got a sweet boy." Walter looked down. Walter looked at Tyler. Walter said nothing for 1 second. Then he said, "Well, the back room is filthy. Get him a broom." Caleb walked across the lot. He stopped in front of Tyler. He held out his hand. 6 in the morning, he said. "Do not be late. Do not bring excuses. Do not bring your last name through that bay door. Bring your hands, your time, and your willingness to be told you are wrong by men who are older than you. Are we clear?" "Yes, sir," Tyler said. The boy took his hand. He did not let go too fast. He did not hold on too long. He shook it once the way men shake hands when they are agreeing to something they intend to keep. Storm stood up. He walked back to Caleb's side. Inside the shop, Naomi appeared at the office door. She had a cup of coffee in one hand and her crutch in the other, and an expression on her face that said she had been watching from the window and was not going to comment in the way that women do not comment on the things that matter most. Caleb looked at her across the lot. She lifted her cup of coffee an inch. He nodded. The wind moved across the parking lot. The new sign rocked once very gently on its bolts. Somewhere behind the building, a robin was making the kind of noise robins make in May in Montana when the snow has finally gone and the ground has remembered how to be ground. Caleb Hayes had spent 3 years believing that holding on alone was the most loyal thing a man could do. He had learned slowly and at real cost that the bravest thing was not the refusing of help. It was the recognizing of the right hand when it was extended. His father had known. Storm had known. Walter had known. Naomi had known. And in the end, standing in his own parking lot with his daughter under his arm and his dog at his side, and a boy with his enemy's name walking across the asphalt to ask for a broom, Caleb knew it too. His father's shop was open. His father's name was on the sign. His daughter's name was on the sign. The men inside the bay had a paycheck. The wind off the mountains was clean, and the war was over. It had not been won by a single man with a rifle in the snow. It had been won by a dead father's notebook and a dog who knew where to dig, and a sheriff who had waited 2 years for a phone call, and a waitress who had finally told the truth, and a woman in a booth who had refused to be invisible, and a boy who had walked 3 miles in a blizzard to do one decent thing in his life. It had been won in the end the way every real thing is won, quietly, together, by people who decided separately and privately that it was worth holding on to. Caleb Hayes looked up at the sign one more time. Then he turned with his daughter under his arm and his dog at his heel, and he walked back into his father's shop, and he got back to work.